All right, all you devils, how's it going out there? Sam with you here. It's Friday, the 24th. Of course, we're going to take a look at Bitcoin today. So I thought what we do here is start on the daily. Now, there's some encouraging action over here. Right? So we're all kind of looking at this triangle over here, potentially now. But before we see what happens is your mind starts to fill in the blanks here. So you immediately start to assume we're going that direction since we've had this little break. And yeah, we'll get to the detail and smaller time frames in a sec. But let's keep in mind here that what really until we get on the other side of this, and I would tell you what I'd like to see is us. We're not particularly targeting this algo target here, but something to break through and then test it from above. This is such a dominant trend line. You can see now we some encouraging signs here. A little break here on this pivot here where we just broke it just enough, rejected. So now we try again. But this is really ideally what you'd like to see is a little bit of a pushback and then a little retest, and then we go. Now that's idealized, and we may not get that. I mean, of course, yeah, we can just blow right up here. But now keep in mind, these triangles are prone to explosive movement out of here. So we don't want to assume that it's up. We want to let the market confirm it. So as we look here, it's hard not to recognize the potential for this to fail and come back to a more typical retracement here. If we fail again, I mean, all sorts of things could cause this. But if we do start to come down again, this region, right, that would be more typically what you'd anticipate. Either way, even if this triangle becomes a 4 at some degree, when we figure out how the hell we're going to count this, if this becomes the 4 and we get up here, well, at some point we're going to complete some sort of a 5 here, right? We'll call it an impulse or a diagonal. We're going to complete something up here, and at some point you're going to anticipate something, that kind of thing might. It remains to be seen, how far we go here as to where where you're drawing that. Wouldn't that be interesting? So it's just a function of how far we're going to blow out of here, assuming we are going to blow out of here. Now let's not make that assumption yet. Let's let the market validate that thought process, because again, previous triangles, for not uncommon here in Bitcoin, have seen big breaks here. So recognizing here the potential, and then even if just we've been stuck here for so long, nice big fat wedge here between the pivot high and the golden zone. Hard to not notice that. So if we can get out of here, right, encouraging, and there are some good signs there, but let's be careful about making that assumption. Now, one thing that is encouraging is we're getting little breaks here. So let me show you this. When we were down here and it was coming down, and we were at that point, the thinking was, remember, this looked a lot like a 4 as well. And so there was some thinking that perhaps we'd blow out of here and we'd finish an impulse here, and this being a 1, 2, massive 3, and we're going to do that. Right. Well, that's not what followed. But note here, the slight breaks on the golden zone, which gave the advantage to the bears. And of course, we've looked at this before. This was technical. That was a 50, and we came to and through first target here, and we ended up kind of in no man's land down here. This nice big pivot here kind of lines up nicely with where we went. And now we've had this bizarre move out of here, which an Elliott, I'd be surprised if 10 Elliotticians didn't give you 10 different counts here. This is very difficult to have any conviction into what we're seeing here from an Elliott perspective, but we don't have to have a perfectly clear Elliott wave structure here to trade this, because we don't have it. This is a bit of a mess. Now, a lot of crypto has looked very similar. It's very similar ugly start here, and then some of them showing real signs of strength here coming out of this. But for Bitcoin, that is the trend line here. And of course, we can't ignore the possibility that this is all one big giant triangle, which would imply we need to come down. Now, we don't need to come down here. As I often will mention, are notorious for an underthrow. So we don't have to come down to this trend line and just, maybe we're going to go keep going. I wouldn't assume that necessarily either. But I guess my bigger point being here, don't assume that we're going to break up until we get on the other side of this and hold it. So with all of that said, now as we look coming back the other direction, with this kind of being the key point I'm trying to emphasize here, this gave the advantage to the bears, right? Breaking that golden zone, and then right the next measured move that followed was this, right? We come down here, right? 50, when we got that, clearly that's a point of resistance up here. So we tag the 50, we get to and through. So just now look at that coming the other direction. So if I pull this off, and we're coming back the other way. So if I take it from this, we know this was a perfect golden zone. So if I come back the other way, little tiny, well, pardon me, this wouldn't be relevant, but we got a tiny little break here, but we're not, so we've got a combination of events that we have to get through. We got to get through, first, we got to get through the trend line, but then keep in mind, we're likely going to hit some resistance here. We're going to bump our heads here. Is it here? Is it here? Now, if we can get on the other side, again, any sort of a retest, you might even do it this way. Come here. So something like this, right? This has been such substantial resistance. Even if we can get up and get through this and then come back and test that level. Now you really get comfortable here if we get that. Now it starts to look encouraging. We're not there yet, but the tiny little breaks here, you can barely see them. It's just wicks getting through. So what does that mean? It's advantage bulls, right? That just, right? So algos are getting. Now, of course, right, we will never know, right, how many algos are there. If they're calibrating, we're seeing a lot more 707, right? So this is a 701. Actually, we'll get over there. I think this is a 707. We're seeing that more and more. But just per what we know about how algorithms respond here, this is just this is not relevant. But this is a slight advantage bulls, even though it's very short-lived. Just as these were very short-lived, right? We were back up and rejected. The next measured move here gave the bears a full, gorgeous trade. Would go from 10 to high threes. So as we deal with this, coming up to that, let the market prove it before you go, oh, okay, here it comes. Let's go heavy. Not yet. All right. So all of that said, let me let's get over to. We got a 3 hour over here. I'm still on Bitstamp. Let me zoom in here. We've done so much on the tether. I thought we'd switch over to Bitstamp today. So a lot going on here. So here's the idea, and this is not an ideal. Several of you have commented, whether members or YouTube subscribers. It's not a perfect triangle, right? We don't have tick to tick confirmation along the way, but as far as I'm concerned, I'm not so much a purist that's going to invalidate the triangle for me. Is this a triangle? Right? Unless something very bizarre happens, it's hard not to see this as a triangle. I mean, you've got all the subdivision is there, and while we aren't tick to tick on each one of these trend lines, it's mostly wicks that are getting through, right? There's no body here that we got through. And here, it's not to the tick, right? And I'm working from the lower pivot rather than up here. Again, this is the pump wick that broke that 65, right? So, but look, once we broke it, look at the reaction, right? So it's, as far as I'm concerned, I'm trading this as it's a triangle until I'm forced to invalidate it somehow. So now, as we look now here, and I know there's a lot of shit on that. So let me zoom in. Let's try an hourly if we can see it a little bit better. Okay, so on the assumption that we get our E to the triangle right here after this 3 brings us down, well, here we see, note, we're breaking the golden zone here. So if I'm pulling from this pivot back here, so here's the swing, here's the internal retracement, but we're breaking golden zone. So we do not get, note, obviously I've got the median lines down here. We don't get a golden corner, but we get a 707, right? So, and this is, I often suggest this as a good place for a stop rather than 2 ticks on the other side of the 65, since more and more this is becoming, it's not quite the secret that it once was. So I'm seeing the 707 get tagged, and then we're going to a target. So this is often a good place to put a stop. If you're going to enter at golden zone, rather than a couple of ticks under the 65, a couple of ticks under the 707. So you're not quite to the 786. Good place for a stop. Here, you're giving it a little room for these wicks to come, and then again, this was a 65, and look how that was rejected. So reasonable here. So we do get a corner pocket, right? And this is already played, right? It's already spent. There's your 80% realized, right? And we go up and we get to and through algo target. So it would seem, again, just the evidence here would imply that if an algorithm is participating here, it's an algorithm that's giving it more cushion here. Right, so maybe there are players in this space that are using 707. Again, we're seeing it more and more, but it's hard to ignore where we end up. So looking here, so again, 80% gets realized and the algo target gets realized. So this now is played. So any sort of retracement that comes out of this, you might look to be drawing another set of median lines. If this is going to be our pivot, then we tee it up the same way here. So I'm going to take this off. Let's just hide it. So even if I were to carry this on, it does line up rather nicely with what I'm proposing as our wave 1 here coming out of this. So if this is our E, well, we've got a nice impulse that broke out of here. So that's the reason to be encouraged about it. So here's the triangle trend line, but here up above, here's the massive trend line from the 20K pivot, right? And then we just looked at that, right? So then we're going to this. Well, actually, it's what was it? Our 14K. Yeah, well, you know where it is. Like so far back, I can't. But we just looked at it on the daily. This is the biggie. Got to get through that one, and it as well. If we just think from this pivot to this pivot, what else is, right? So we're going to have to get through this as well. So note from this pivot, how we're going to bump into the trend line in the golden zone at the exact same time. So that's why I caution you to don't assume that it breaks. As a matter of fact, assume that it doesn't break. Right? You would always assume that until we get on the other side of it. Don't let your mind fill that in and we're off to the moon. Assume it holds. Right? That's my assumption. Until I see it break cleanly and clearly, and it's not just a pump wick like that. Let me see it break and hold. Then bullhorn comes out. Okay, so let's break into this coming off the low, right? Because it's interestingly technical. So let's get all this cleared up. I'm going to just hide this. Now, as we look coming off of this, let's clear all of this out of here since I think we've made the case. We don't need to keep those trend lines there. So let's just dig in here a little bit. This is interestingly technical. In fact, I'm going to go down to a 30. All right. So coming off of this, well, this we get a 5 here, but it's a diagonal. So we've got to. Hang on. Well, we don't need that just at this moment in time. All right, so if you're kind of looking at this and you're going 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. See, it doesn't quite work because this can't be your 3 because it's shorter than the 5th and the 1st. So you have to play it as an impulse. So it does appear like we're going A B C A B C A B C A B C. Now, this is kind of ugly, but you're going to have to work it as an ABC. So you end up here with a candidate for a leading diagonal coming off of the low. From an Elliott perspective, it would be hard to label it as anything else. Clearly, we get the overlap of the 1. So I think you can feel relatively secure in the idea that we've got a 5, and in this case, a leading diagonal coming off of this. As a matter of fact, if I'm not mistaken, if I look at length of 3 relative to 5. This would be the one. Again, purists will bicker over this, but if we look at it, so 3 is longer than 1, but 5 is just shy of longer than 3. Now, in the ideal leading diagonal, 5 is longer. Now, purists are going to say can't be a diagonal, right? I'm not that much a purist, so I think that's unnecessarily rigid. It's my view, right? My opinion, right? Take it for what it's worth. I see this as a 1-2. There's a nice little ABC. It's not a perfect ABC, but it is technical. So coming off of the low, right? So I come in here. That's my start. There's no ABC into a 2, right? So I get just where I'm looking for it. It's always, right? It helps you kind of solidify into the idea here. So I come right between the 50 and the 618, right where I'm looking at. Now coming off of that, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, looks like I get a nice 3. So per that idea, let's get this off of here. Hard not to see the potential here is 1, 2, 3. Right? So this also, right? Just again, what you guys of course recognize, it's my point being, we do it the same way every time. Same way, that's the value. Now we don't get quite to the 1618, but this is the second most common target for a third. 127, 138, and we're kind of in between. But 1, 2, 3, ABC for the 4. We don't overlap the 1, so I've got a nice impulse coming off of that. If that's my 4, length of the 1 projected from the 4, well, now we're getting through the 175 either. It's a bit of a pump wick. There's some vol here, right? So this wick is Yeah, it's just Bitcoin is prone to doing that. Let's get this off here as our 2. So 1, 2, got my impulsive 3. Oh, all right. So this leads me to here, which leads me to this. One thing to note here, look how the 233 has just played this just beautifully, right? Vegas wave. No, don't ignore it. All right. So on the other side of the Vegas wave, just in terms of the simplicity of how you might evaluate that, right? Which side of the Vegas wave are we on? Here, they're on top of each other. You can't even see the distinction. Now, as they spread, looks pretty good, but 1, 2 perfect ticks. So we've got a completed impulse right here, right? No reason not to put the 1 there. Just no reason not to. Right? If you're an Elliottician, I've got a completed impulse here. Now, is this my 2? Am I putting the 2 here? Well, so when I say that, there's no reason not to put a 1 here. If this continues to go higher, this could get relabeled. So we can't say for sure that this is the top of the 1, because this little ABC, well, if we look at how shallow that is, let's go from our low here to here. Well, we're not even to the 38. So it would be uncommonly shallow for the 2 to be here. Now, right, we may have to live with that if it's 1, 2, and we're going to get a 3, but given this, that looks corrective. So at this point, right, we would just keep this down here. This is where we would anticipate it, right? It doesn't mean that it must come down here, but looking at where we sit right now, if I had to label it, this kind of looks like what might be in store here, because it's just too shallow. Right, and that certainly looks like a 3 now with this coming down. So we've overlapped here. So we lose the potential for to come off of this with an impulse. Now a diagonal could come off of there, but it sure doesn't look like it's going to. Now that's a little skinny. Let's see. From this to this, right, you'd like to see that X. Again, for a purist, you might invalidate that. You'd like to see 618 on the X. You don't get it. So, but again, until I'm forced to relabel this, I'm thinking we're going to get something like that to come in. Again, I'm just free drawing here, but you get my point. We're likely to come out of this and get a 3. Right? If we got that, now high degree of confidence here. Nice high volume node right here. I've got my golden zone down here. I've got lots of structure over to the left. Right? Look at this little ridge, and that goes back. Oh, all right, you could do it a couple of different ways here, but if you want to get all of that just underneath the 50, so I know I've got potential, right? It's always just that potential support here. I've got it here too. So if it's going to come deeper, right, look how that frames rather nicely into where we'd be looking for the 2. All of this structure here to play into that. Now, of course, you can, right, let's not be overly selective on what we're choosing here. That's in play just as well, right? And look what we do here. All right, so that you see how that prior resistance tags it here. So if this is going to come down, you would anticipate something similar. So here, price action guys who don't care about the Elliott count are going to look at that and say, oh, the resistance becomes support. Right? We're going to come down here and repeat. We're going to repeat here. We're going to repeat here. Either one of these, right? For the Elliottician, see that's my view here. Why when the Elliott wave is there and it's clear, I think you have an advantage over price action people. That's my opinion, right? Chill out, price action guys, right? There's a lot of value there. But when I can combine the two, when I get price action plus an Elliott count, how is it I don't have the advantage? I do, right? As far as I'm concerned. So that's why I continue to work Elliott where it's there. When it's not there, like it's not coming off the low, where I can't go back that far on a 15-minute. Coming off the low, again, 10 Elliotticians are going to give you 10 different counts. So is that giving you advantage over price action? No, it's not, right? So skip the Elliott, go to price action, which is kind of what we did here. We'll see right now, but this would be just gorgeous to catch this here. Like, so this in terms of where's the next trade, if I can buy it down here, and we've stalled here for a long time, was that 93.60-ish to 92.80. If the opportunity is presented, right? If it's offered down here, that's a big, well, I will certainly be paying attention here. So what you might do is put an alert. So you might use something like this, right? So if it's going to come down here, I know most of us are going to keep an eye on Bitcoin, but something like that, I want to know if it comes down here. Again, right? I'm probably most like you, or most of you. I'm assuming you're going to be checking Bitcoin pretty regularly. So any of these, even this, right? Let me know in case I'm, in my case, right? Often I can be recording a video or day trading the S&P or something else. Just don't let this slip by without knowing that we're coming down here, right? We got good opportunity there. So this, again, this is not to swing for the fence. This is not to necessarily, right? Are you trading or investing, right? Well, if you're trading this, this would be something to pay attention to. If you're investing here and you're not worried about where you're going to place a stop, well, different story. But in terms of the potential here, this is my 1, this is my 2. Well, there's a pretty nice looking risk reward setting up here. Let me go to a 30-minute. Looking at where we might target this going. So we know this will be a nice shorthand if we go to the 618, but this is a general target for the third. So just teeing it right up, just as we did before, since we already burned our 80% here, if we're going to get it somewhere in this range. Well, maybe we're going to get it up here on the upper parallel. Maybe here. Right? That's not that far out, given I'm on a 30-minute chart. So we look here, and this is, that's got my attention. Right. So any opportunity here, I'm looking to add here, right? But I would not take my, certainly I'm going to put a stop on it. So I'd probably use 707 here for this trade. So that would give you, what do we got there? 92, so maybe 9,200. Well, you've got this nice little structure here. So maybe 9,200 for a stop on this. So it's not, you don't need to go all in here. So if you get the pivot down here, it's not likely to go straight. So first bite down here is not a bad idea, but anticipate that you're likely to go 1-2 if we're going to get an impulse out of here. So by the time, if you do, right, again, this is all, we don't have this, but if you get this, this is where you add, because now I'm already adding with a little bit of house money. I wouldn't necessarily, well, let's consider the possibilities here. Again, I don't have this, but if I were to go up here and get that, well, you got to think about, at very least, take a partial there. Considering, remember, we've got that massive trend line to work with, and back to the daily chart, you can see the vulnerability to a sell-off. So if you were going to take a partial here, this is a place to reload. But again, I wouldn't be going all in here. This is not a place to go all in, in my view. Not the time to go all in. Bite size, a little add here. If you were to get that. Right, potentially another place to add. Now you're letting the market dictate the right time to be looking to add, and you're adding with house money. Be my suggestion. So very encouraging signs here to come off of this pivot, the proposed E with an impulse. All right, that's encouraging, right, for Bitcoin bulls. Bears. Well, bears are back here. Bears are back here looking at this going, right? I mean, the potential here to come down here and do something deeper is still very much in play, right? So even we look at it just using an algo swing down here. Well, let's get here, bear with it. I want M2. Okay, so something down here, right? That bears. There you go. All right, there's your bear count. If we come down here, that's, talk about buying all day, right? That's where you get aggressive on size. Not here, not on this little bit. You come down here, you get the opportunity to buy it under 7. Yeah, that's that. Back the truck up. This, we're just a little bite here, just a little bite. Try and play with house money down here. Load the boat. Okay, guys, there you go. I think that's all I have to cover here. We'll see. This will be interesting going into next week as to how we deal with this trend line. But I think, again, don't assume anything with Bitcoin. Let it prove it. Okay, guys, back to you later.